All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Monday, October 21st. So, real quick, everything in today's video for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. So, let's go ahead and we'll talk about a little bit about today's price action. Interesting here, S&P futures, we close at 3,006. So as of now, which is amazing to me, but we are above 3,003. I didn't really think that we were going to get there. We've been hitting a lot of resistance there. I think, well, listen, I'm not going to make any predictions, but I wouldn't be surprised if we kind of get back into value for the week. But it is what it is. Maybe we've got something going on here. I do think a lot of, well, again, I'm speculating a little bit, but some of the move up today, positive trade talk. It seems like everybody's playing nice in the sandbox today, and that kind of helped futures kind of remain up. Market breadth, okay, pretty much all day today. Green trailed off a little bit at the end. I think you could see that if you look at IWM. Movers for the day, you could see IWM was the leader of the day. Continues to outperformed last week's when we talked about last week's performance. So up right around 1% for the day. It was at one point like up about a percentage and a half, but it ended up closing right where it opened. So it kind of gave back those intraday gains. Also, I would say notable is bonds. We're continuing to kind of see that move out of bonds, and bonds kind of move down. Let's check out the chart of TLT. Before we do that, just S&P, by the way, we do have more resistance ahead, 3012. So that's why it's kind of, it's nice to see us advance here a little bit, and you've got a bullish engulfing. We took out 1, 2, 3 candles today, which again, these are good things. Next level of resistance, which, these are all levels that we highlight pre-market, 3012, call it 3013. That would be very similar to getting back out here. But I think all in all, a lot of groups participating. Let's just hit TLT up. I talked about this again, I think on Friday's video, as well as the weekend video, but now moving to the bottom of value. So it is below basically all the moving averages, all the short-term moving averages, right? Below, not the long-term, right? We've got the 200 down here, but we're below the 50, the 20, the 5, and kind of continues to move down. So we'll see if that finds some support somewhere along the lines, but for now TLT has been moving lower, and pretty decisive break of the 50-day moving average and continuation to the downside. So that is bonds. Gold wasn't much going on here either. We talked about how there was a little bit of gold buying on Friday. A lot of sector hedging too in the sector ETFs. Just again, that's kind of longer term. That's January 2021 that they were doing that, but that's often the case. Is from day to day. Sometimes you forget about the flow that hit. Let's just look at IWM. IWM again, you could see kind of maybe a little bit toppy looking candle after a decent run. It stopped right at that point of control, the gray line here, which is where all the majority of the volume was in the last period from this shaded part. So that's what that looks like. We'll talk a little bit. I did a nice midday video, so this video will be a little bit shorter. Nice to see the financials, right? They are continuing to move higher. The relationship I think to kind of think about here with the financials is if you look at the banks, I look at KBE for the banking ETF. But if you want to look at, let's see, where is it? KBE, probably here it is, right here. This is starting to get out of the downward trend. So this is kind of, if you look at maybe a little bit more than a 1-year chart, we'll look at a 2-year chart. You can see this has been in a downtrend now for a couple years. Getting very, very close to that 200-day moving average for maybe a move above there. But again, really nice performance the last week or so. I liked what Josh Brown had to say on CNBC. Kind of what I've been saying. If you listen to my video on Friday, talking about a lot of people thinking that the banks had to participate for the S&P to make 52-week highs. Interesting how well they've been doing the last week and a half, but no new highs yet. And I think it's just more of a rotation game. Just kind of looking around at some stocks, right? If you looked at Ross Store, a couple of the areas that performed really well recently. No major sell signal here. Maybe the RSI not making a new, not getting overbought here, but interesting. In an up day, Ross Stores was down to on basically no news that I saw. Maybe there was some type of analyst note, but TJX was down. Lulu, which was really strong. Lulu actually held up pretty well, only down 80 basis points. But still, you look at the market and you're like, hey, the leaders must have extended higher. Some of them did, right? Apple, of course, did, up another 1.7% and out of that little bull flag consolidation here. So real nice move here, but not every area was strong. Retail was a little bit weak. Also, ITB, which we mentioned this towards the end of last week. I got a couple questions this weekend as I was putting some charts up, which I think were pretty well. Some of the charts that I put out there on Sunday night. But ITB, home builders, VPOC, and a move down. Again, market being up, IWM up decently, and the home builders, big underperformance day, down 70 basis points. Remember, one day is not a trend, but it's funny that just it takes out that version point of control and automatically starts to fade. So again, that's how you use them. You could use them, especially when they live a little bit higher north, to take targets, and then you take your risk off. Maybe you leave a small runner on, but I said this in Friday's video that it was a great place to take profits. I did that. The one trade that I had on in the builders was TPH. It actually finished lower on the day, but I took my last position off, even though there is a version point of control. So I do think this can get to 1685, but I just didn't want to be greedy, considering that what the whole group was doing. So that could be something that I go back into because you get a nice breakout. Staying with this group, let's see how Summit finished. This is a name that I really like. Actually, closed very close to the highs. It's a $23 stock. VPOC up here higher at 26. Builder was a name that we saw calls about a week and a half ago. Has done pretty well. So a couple of names there. Today, in terms of option activity, I might as well just jump into that. JCI, which you can now get into cheaper. We talked about that in the midday video. What did I do with this position? I kind of like the chart, even though it's got work to do, right? It's got to get back above the 50-day moving average. But they went out and what looked to be a purchase of January calls. This name reports in a couple weeks. So what did I do? Just kind of started a small position with with a lot of room to add. And you could see I really didn't do a lot of trading today. I added one trade that I talked about in the weekend video, ISRG. A couple other names that we talked about. NVDA, pretty nice. NVIDIA, nice move off of today. And again, what I talked about, I try to practice as much as I can what I preach. So the watch list that I put together had a couple financials in it, had JP Morgan in it, which, out to basically breaking out. Really like this breakout here. Out of a long consolidation, and you could basically draw in kind of a big inverted. It's not a perfect inverted head and shoulders, but after a good run up, consolidation for about a year and a half and a breakout. So really nice there in JP Morgan. So really kind of highlighted a bunch of different names in different groups, not all growth names, because I don't think that's the type of market that we're in. Another name that I highlighted was AbbVie, which is now moving above the 200-day moving average. So again, I think you can kind of be you don't have to look all in that growth sector. You can kind of pick names out of different sectors and see what they're doing. I did a lot of chart studying, not only before we sent out the member video, but also Sunday night, just looking at recent highs. And there's a lot of different names that are moving decently. Another one that I noticed, different industry obviously, but also look at the consolidation in this one and PPG moving out and up. So you got different groups. So again, not all about those growth names. You just have to be a little bit more open-minded right now. Other names, interesting. One name that I also highlighted. I didn't do anything with this today, but Twitter. Maybe this runs into the numbers. I think we're going to see that in some names. But yeah, here's all again. Not a lot of trading for me today. If we go to our option activity channel, what did I KNX, which does have earnings, but I might actually try playing that for an earnings trade. We'll see. That comes up in a couple days. Names like CFX, Colfax, so again, seeing a variety of different sectors. COMM, came up about midday today. This name continued to run, but it had a pretty decent gap up. Again, always want to be careful when somebody mentions a name that has option activity. Well, when did the options occur? Well, they occurred midday. I think we saw this a small order last week too. IGT was another name that we saw big option flow in. I did not take this one. IGT traded, let's see how many contracts, 28,000 contracts January. So again, kind of an interesting name. It's been basing for a while. Sometimes I just kind of have to get my arms around if it's a name I haven't been following for a while, just to kind of take a look at it. But again, this one moved very quickly as well, so it wasn't like you caught a winner today in this one. This will be more of a swing trade. So there's a couple trades. I think it's also kind of interesting that somebody bought stamp calls. Keep in mind, when did they buy these calls? They bought them back on 10/10, and they bought October 77 calls. Really interesting here because October is now over with. So I don't think they rolled these calls. They paid $1.10 and they expired worthless. The stock now trading in the after hours. They have a deal with PayPal, not PayPal, excuse me, with UPS. Stock up to $92. Somebody off by a day. Wow, really difficult. So perhaps they knew something, but they didn't get the timing right on this one. And again, maybe they flipped into stock. You don't know, but it doesn't look like they rolled. If they rolled any of them, it was much smaller than what they did on this last previous Thursday that they bought those calls. One other thing, just a couple names that reported earnings. CDNS. This was a name that I did play for earnings. So far, looking okay. Have to get through the earnings call, so we'll see. But that looks pretty good right here. I did hedge a little bit at $71, which I think was the right thing to do. Even though there is a VPOC up here, and cadence up at 74 and change, and I'm in November options. There's no weeklies in this one, so hopefully this continues to go higher, even though I did the partial hedge. Just one other thought, all this stuff that's going on with Boeing, keep in mind, Boeing doesn't operate in a vacuum. A lot of the companies that build the parts that go into the 737 with no new orders, you would think some of these aviation companies are probably going to get hit on earnings, just as this one is. This is Hexcel Corporation. So, if you want to play a little bit to the short side with some of these names that are going to be reporting, UTX reports tomorrow. It's going to be interesting to see what they say and how much impact they have from the 737. All right, guys, so we'll leave it there. Shorter video because I did a nice longer video midday, which is publicly available. So you can go ahead and watch it. Give me some feedback on it because hopefully that's a value add to some people during the day. Appreciate it. Have a great night and see you guys tomorrow.